Many legends surround the life and death of infamous outlaw George Big Nose Parrott. Some say he was a member of Butch Cassidy's Wild Bunch, while others say he rode with Frank and Jesse James. Although his gang enjoyed a successful run of stagecoach and train robberies during the late 1870s, the idea that he was part of a larger and more notorious outfit are little more than rumors. There is another supposed urban legend surrounding George Parrott, and a considerably more gruesome one at that. Some say that upon being captured and lynched by an angry mob of Wyoming citizens, George's skin and bones were fashioned into collector's items, then sold to the highest bidder. Given their outlandish nature, many dismiss these rumors as completely false. If he didn't ride with the James gang, there's no way something so hideous occurred following his death. However, it may equally surprise and appall you to discover that these reports were no mere rumors. They're completely factual. In 1878, George became a highly wanted man after he and his gang murdered 2 lawmen after a botched train robbery. The officers traced the outlaws to their camp at a place called Rattlesnake Canyon, but they were soon spotted by a gang lookout. The robbers stamped out the campfire and hid in a bush. Then, when the 2 lawmen walked into their camp, they were subjected to a fatal ambush. One was immediately shot in the head while the other was shot in the back as he tried to flee. Upon learning of the ambush, the local sheriff put out a $10,000 bounty for the gang, which was later doubled to $20,000, dead or alive. The following year, George and his gang carried out a daring daylight robbery against a cash convoy containing a U.S. Army payroll comprising 15 soldiers and 2 officers. As the convoy approached a shallow river crossing, the gang donned masks and stationed themselves at a turn in the trail. They then proceeded to ambush and capture the rear element of the soldiers which was guarding the cash wagon. Depending on who you asked at the time, the gang stole between $3,000 and $14,000. And due to the audacious and scandalous nature of the raid, the federal government threw everything they had at the effort to find and arrest the gang. Yet it wasn't the efforts of federal authorities that ended up with the men being brought to justice. It was one of the gang's loose tongues that landed them in trouble. A member of the gang named Dutch Charlie got himself extremely drunk in Montana's Miles City and began mouthing off about the raid of the U.S. Army payroll wagon, as well as the fact that he had participated in the murders of 2 Wyoming lawmen. Dutch was completely unaware of the huge bounty on his head, and when someone overheard him giving away information to identify himself, they rushed to local law enforcement in an effort to claim some of the money. All 4 members of the gang were arrested in one fell swoop, and George Parrott was returned to Wyoming to face justice. Following his trial on April 2nd of 1881, George was sentenced to hang for his crimes, but attempted to escape from the Rawlinstown jail after managing to break free of his shackles. George then hid in a washroom until the jailer walked inside. Then, using his own detached shackles as a makeshift weapon, George struck the jailer over the head and fractured his skull. However, the jailer not only maintained consciousness, but he managed to put up one heck of a fight and called out to his wife for assistance. Grabbing a pistol, the jailer's wife managed to talk Parrott back into his cell under pain of death. It's believed she told him that hanging would be a quicker death than getting gut shot, and that the husband and wife jailer team would ensure he died a slow and painful death unless he complies. News of the escape attempt spread through the town, and the incensed citizenry began making their way to the jail, enraged at the near mortal wounding of one of their own. While the jailer lay in a nearby hospital recovering from his grievous wounds, masked men with pistols burst into the jail and dragged Parrott from his cell. But these men were no rescue party. They were a lynch mob, and in front of more than 200 of the townsfolk, they strung George Parrott up from a telegraph pole and watched as he strangled to death. Following George's grim demise, 2 doctors named Thomas Maggie and John Eugene Osborne took possession of his body, claiming they wished to study the outlaw's brain for clues to his criminality. The top section of Parrott's skull was crudely sawn off, and the cap was presented to Maggie's 16-year-old medical assistant, Lillian Heath. Heath became the first female doctor in Wyoming and is said to have used the cap as an ashtray, a pen holder, and a doorstop. The doctors also removed the skin from George's thighs and chest before sending it to a tannery in Denver, Colorado, where it was made into a pair of shoes and a medical bag. These were then kept by John Osborne, who wore the shoes to his inaugural ball after being elected as the first Democratic governor of the state of Wyoming. Parrott's dismembered body was then stored in a whiskey barrel filled with a salt solution for about a year, while the mad doctors continued their gruesome experiments on him. Only a year after his death, he was buried in the yard behind Dr. McGee's office. During the years that followed, the desecration of George's body was slowly forgotten, until May 11th of 1950, when construction workers unearthed a whiskey barrel filled with bones while working on the Rawlins National Bank. Inside the barrel was a skull with the top sawn off, as well as the shoes said to have been made from George's thigh flesh. The then octogenarian Dr. Lillian Heath was then contacted, and in her shame, she had her human skull ashtray sent to Rawlins for a proper burial. Some found the idea that it was part of George's skull to be a rather dubious claim, but it was found to fit the skull and the barrel perfectly, and DNA testing later confirmed the remains were those of George Parrott. These days, the shoes made from George's skin are on permanent display at the Carbon County Museum in Rawlins, together with the lower section of the outlaw's skull. The shackles he escaped from during the time in the Rawlins jail, as well as the skull ashtray, are on show at the Union Pacific Museum in Omaha, Nebraska, but the medicine bag made from his skin has never been found. The claim that a Democrat politician wore the shoes to his inaugural ball is just one of the reasons that George's story has taken on the status of an urban legend. Few people wish to believe that a man of such high status did something so utterly savage as to wear a garment made from human remains. It's clear that he regretted the move, which is why he had them stored in the whiskey barrel before burying. But the fact remains, that actually happened. So next time someone tells you that human skin shoes or skull ashtrays are nothing but an urban legend, tell them to visit the Carbon County Museum in Rawlins, Wyoming, so they can see the evidence with their own 2 eyes.
Hey friends, thanks so much for watching. Just a quick heads up, I release new videos every second Tuesday at 7 p.m. EST. Also check out my main channel, Let's Read, where you can hear longer compilations of interesting, scary stories just like these. And if you prefer audio only, feel free to check out the Let's Read podcast, located anywhere you listen to podcasts, all linked in the description below. Thanks so much, friends, and I'll see you in the next one.